We're going to do a final wrap up on the goat prairie. It's not completely done yet. They still have to burn it. And I suppose I could burn it, but I don't know if all the neighbors have fire insurance. So anyway, it's really something spectacular. Dream Farm is brought to you by Whitetail Institute Food Plot Blends, the Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail app, Hoyt Archery, and RTP Outdoors. So we're looking at doing some goat prairie. And no, I didn't invent that term. I think Gregg Schmidt invented it. Did you?
Wish I could, but say that, but no.
No, I've got Gregg Schmidt with the Iowa Private Lands Biologist, and Greg Pattison is with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So where's Greg at? Hop out here where we can see you. So we're going to take this old, what would be, I guess, a native grassland on this steep slope right below us. And these guys are going to do all the work. You can see them all behind me. That's not going to be me doing the work, fortunately, but that steep slope has got some cedar trees on it now, and we're going to try to return that to the native habitat. So one of you guys real quick tell us what these like bluff prairies or goat prairies, what they're all about. So we got the before version, and then we're going to have the after version when we're done.
Yeah, so a lot of the hill prairies in this area, so the historically fires would have come through these areas, and a lot of these bluff prairies or hill prairies or goat prairies, whatever you want to call them, they would have had fire coming across fairly frequently and kept trees off. And they're also mainly on the south and western facing slopes, so they're hot and warm, dry conditions, so trees don't generally do very well, but cedars tend to do very well in there. And really since about the 1990s, cedars have really invaded into the hill prairies here in Alameda County, and so they just kind of exploded across, and they literally can take over these entire hillsides and just completely take over and shade out those prairie areas. And those prairies are really quite diverse prairie habitats, and they hold a lot of rare species, wildflowers, grasses that are growing in there, and of course that has a whole suite of insects that are using those. There's a lot of rare insects on these areas, like Leonard skippers and Odo skippers and little butterflies that you never hear of, that are kind of on these areas. And then there's also little lizards, six-line racers and different ones that are out there. So there's a lot of this diversity, and then there's grassland birds that are using these areas too. So they're highly diverse and highly productive, actually, diversity. But they get surrounded by these cedar trees and shaded out, and we kind of lose all that diversity and potentially start losing some of those species. So our goal with this is to remove this cedar, get the sunlight back on. And what's amazing on these hill prairies here in Alameda County is we take these cedars off, and there's immediate response with that native prairie. We do have to worry about some invasive species coming in, so it does take some doing, and prescribed fire can help with that over time and keep them open and keep them productive.
So we're gonna go look at the site right now, and it's really steep. What would you say the slope is? I mean, it's way more than a 45-degree, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be.
So we're going to drop in here and take a quick look, and we'll show you what's already there and what Gregg is talking about. And then I'll come back on this at some point in the future when this project is done, and we'll take a look at it, after. So this is the before version and the mission behind it. It's not a whitetail focused habitat project, but there is enough stuff in here. We can see little birch trees, and I know there's some oak that are trying to come up in there too. And just getting the cedars out is going to open this up for a lot of regeneration that would otherwise not be there.
Yeah, the turkeys will really like it for once it's more grass, and forbs, they'll like it for bugging, and the broods take their broods through there, and a lot of insects, like Gregg said, and they'll be bugging in there. But I can see deer using it too a little bit on the float, the forbs.
They've removed all the cedar trees from a big piece of this, and in so doing they've released a lot of the old native prairie. And there's plenty of stuff growing. Golly, you look everywhere. I see little oak trees. There's all kinds of stuff that I don't know what they are.
Maple.
I see sumac. Yeah, and I don't know what some of this stuff is. I mean, I know that when Gregg Pattison was talking about it at the very beginning of this project, you know, he was going over what some of the main species are that we're going to release. But it goes without saying that they're all here, and this has been really good. Once we burn it, it'll clean up some of this other stuff, you know, where it'll be mostly the prairie and probably oak and a few other species that are fire resistant. Anything that's not kind of native and adapted to fire will disappear, leaving the more native stuff.
Because the whole thing is there used to be more natural fires that would wipe everything out, but after those have been, there aren't as many of them now because people own it and farm it and stuff.
Yeah, and it's, for some reason back in the day they would burn on purpose, and they just don't do that anymore, which for better or for worse, you know, I think they used to do it because they're trying to keep it open for pasture, you know, keep the timber open, and now people have gotten away from that, so you don't have hardly any prescribed fire, and you don't get very many accidental fires, so you just don't have that same effect of cleansing these areas of some of these undesirables that are not adapted.
Right.
So the natives for the most part are adapted. So yeah, we're kind of showing you as we go here what's left and what's going to really flourish. But that's a wrap on the Goat Prairie. And they call it a Goat Prairie. I mean, we kind of talked about it at the beginning, but anybody that missed that part is because it's native prairie, but it's on a really steep slope.
I didn't realize how steep it was until they cleared it off. I mean, when you're flying it with the drone or when you're looking at it covered in trees, like, yeah, I mean, it's a bluff, but standing here, I mean, it's a cliff.
If you fell and you started, you're going 600 feet.
Yeah.
You're not, it's not like there's any way to level this
No.
out. It's steep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, it'll turn into something that the deer will use and the ruffed grouse will use. Right now it was just basically a struggling cedar forest, and the future is bright for the Goat Prairie. Well, we appreciate you joining us for this episode of The Dream Farm, and we'll see you right back here again next week. And we hope that you will always
dream big.
That's right.